Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on 10 growth moves for B2C brands and how to test them. I'm Nicola, co-founder of CMO Circle and partner at Growth & Co. And questions on improving your website conversion rate come up frequently in both communities, particularly as we're all trying to do more with less. So I am delighted to welcome Osh Rice, founder of Daydot, an award-winning conversion rate optimization and user experience agency, working with brands such as Wall Street Journal, RSPB, McAfee, and Zipcar. And he's going to be sharing his optimization tips and tricks with plenty of real-world examples. Osh is also a Manchester United fan, so a bit of a clash going on here with James. I'm very excited about tonight, hence all the predictions that are going on in chat. So please do introduce yourselves in chat. And we'd love to hear, how would you rate your current website on a score of 1 to 5? 1 being, crikey, we've got so much work to do. And 5, we're up there with the best. And please also feel free to share your your football guess for tonight. Mahal and me really don't care. James is feeling quite passionate about Tottenham winning. Osh is on the other end of the spectrum. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Osh.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Nicola. It's great to meet you all. I realised that looking back, I've created a ton of content, which I hope is going to be really useful. So I'll try and fly through, and we can, as we go along, drop any questions you have in the chat, and we'll look to cover things off when we get to the end. Right. So to kick things off, we're Daydot. We are a conversion rate optimization, experimentation, and user experience agency. We essentially help brands to really uncover what their users like, and to start making better decisions that have real commercial impacts. We again look at user testing, conversion rate optimization, and conversion-centered design without sacrificing your kind of design and vision. We're going to go through 10 growth moves, primarily for B2C, but there's a lot here that is still really rings true for the B2B crowd. So let's get cracking. So first of all, you're not your user, and studies show that around 70% of website changes made without testing can really have little to no impact at all. And this means that even well-intentioned updates and changes can backfire and lead to lower revenue and higher acquisition costs. That's actually pretty optimistic. Optimizely, who are a big A/B testing tool, ran the numbers over 130,000 website and app changes and found that on average, only 12% make much of a positive impact on businesses. So I guess the question is, what can you do about it? Can you guess what it might be? The old way is kind of big bets based on opinions and kind of hippos. I guess we've got quite a lot of hippos. The highest paid person in the room's opinion in the room right now. The way that the way that we suggest going about it is looking at continuous compound optimization. You start to see things like a higher return on investment per visitor. You start to reduce risk. So sort of testing before committing to something, so there's no huge redesign regrets. And it's a cultural unlock. So teams aligned around testing move faster and stay agile. Experimentation is not a tactic, it's kind of a growth engine. The brands that scale don't just advertise better, they experiment relentlessly. The fastest growing D2C brands aren't just better at storytelling, personalization, or checkout design. They test more, they learn faster, and they adapt quicker. So today I'm going to talk you through some actionable ways that we can embrace experimentation to drive measurable, repeatable business growth. So we'll start off with a classic. So consumer expectations have shifted. Your customers are no longer comparing you to your competitors, but they're comparing you to best-in-class intuitive user experiences. So shoppers demand speed, relevance, and values alignment. Brands that are slow to respond, poorly personalized, or tone deaf are getting ghosted. Your customers are not the same as they were even 2 years ago. They base their expectations not on your competitors, but in best-in-class experiences. So adding barriers like unclear returns policies, subpar search, or forced registration can detract from users' experience and represent barriers to converting, especially for first-time visitors. Klarna is a really great example of how barriers to conversion can be removed with kind of stuff like 3-click checkout, native shopping, pay in 3. Whereas for first-time users on many sites, the process of kind of that registration can take as many as 8 steps. And rightly or wrongly, Klarna's model then becomes the default expectation that you're being benchmarked against. We all know this one. Kind of skip intro saved users 136 years of time in the first month. So users now expect to skip the fluff at all times and get straight to the meat of where they want to go. So slow loading heroes, unclear calls to action, lack of clarity, all of this stuff stands against you, and it rides against your customers' expectations. So there's a couple of things that I would look at trying. So test to skip the fluff homepage option. So we've run experiments where raising the visibility of popular items and bestsellers creates a shortcut for users and results in significant growth in conversions. Look to test out guest checkout. You can even do this through a painted door test to gauge interest before investing in a bigger kind of piece of development there. We've seen a clear highlighting of returns, cancellations, and shipping throughout the early journey can push order completes by over 18% in some cases. And we'd always say, look to invest in always on customer insights. And it doesn't need to be a huge operation. You can even look at setting up some pop-up surveys to understand what users are looking for, identify content gaps, and figure out why they're not converting. So start getting consistent. Little bit of backstory to this. I want to talk about this shirt. I was doom scrolling on Insta a couple of weeks back, and I saw this ad for apparently it's called a shacket, which is a new one for me. It's a cross between a shirt and a jacket. Makes sense. So I clicked through the ad and thought, yeah, this is for me. It took me through to, rather than the product page I was looking for, it took me through to a PLP, where they had everything, but not the actual shacket that I'd clicked on. And it was such a frustrating experience. I had to reverse image search from the ad to figure out what it was and realize it was actually from 2 seasons ago. So that was my sad face. I couldn't buy my nice pink jacket. What made it worse was then over the next coming days, I kept getting retargeted with the same ad over and over again. And it was just driving me nuts. So I want to talk about symmetrical messaging. We've all clicked on an ad before only to find that the page feels completely disconnected from what was promised. So whether it's a different offer, mismatched imagery, or irrelevant messaging, when expectations aren't met, it creates a frustrating experience. So symmetrical messaging helps solve this by ensuring that the value proposition, images, and offers from your marketing campaign are directly reflected in the on-site experience. So if a user clicks on an ad showcasing a 65% discount on running shoes with an image of athletes in motion, the landing page should continue that exact message. It should highlight the offer, feature similar imagery or action shots, and stay consistent. And this approach makes the transition from your ad campaign to your site feel seamless and reassures users they've landed in the right place. Have a look at running ad to landing page audits. We had a client last year that did something similar and just made sure that where we're pointing users is where we expect them to go. And they saw return on ad spend increase by 25% just by aligning product-specific ads with the product they should go to. Seems like a no-brainer, but it happens more than we care to imagine. Maintain consistency of message and promotion across your landing pages, and keep those consistent promotions clearly visible and active throughout the journey. That includes in basket and cart. And that can have a massive impact as it prevents users from interrupting their journey to dig this stuff out. Menus are always a big one for us. We spend a lot of time testing across menus and figuring out what works and what doesn't. I was always told that your menu should lead to money. Menus are kind of the silent assassins of conversion. So a bad menu can kill your e-commerce experience before the first scroll. Too often, shop is buried under layers of abstraction while the About Us page proudly stands in prime position. Like it's not a museum, it's a shop. And your navigation should be ruthlessly commercial. Lead people to the money, lead them to where you want to go. Make it super clear what you'd like them to do. Start categorizing based on how customers think, not how your back-end catalog is structured. So hold their hand, make it feel like they're gliding through. There's a good example from American Eagle. Their floral dresses are implemented as a subcategory of dresses, making it impossible for users to get an overview of all dresses or list with both floral dresses and mini dresses, for example. Wayfair do this stuff pretty regularly and get it spot on. So the shapes of their desks are kind of correctly implemented as filters rather than subcategories. And that allows users to get an overview of all desks as well as mix and match desk shapes by filtering for them. It's kind of simple stuff like this can make a real difference. Over 85% of sites don't divide categories and subcategories well. So start having a think about dividing categories and subcategories into manageable chunks. Subdivide when reaching around 10 categories and aim for about 10 products in each of those categories to get users to the deepest level and make it scannable. We did something recently for RSPB Shop where we looked to reimagine and reframe their product discovery and navigation. And that resulted in a 33% increase in product discoverability. And that's really kind of figuring out how customers search, how they want to categorize products, and what works for them in terms of getting deep down into that product level. So a couple of things to try here. Look at adding click tracking to really kind of see what people are actually clicking on. Reorder your menu items based on popularity and margin maybe, and test this stuff out. We've seen recently a 17% growth in product page views just by reframing categories from kind of men's jackets to cold weather gear, and making it kind of easy to self-identify your problem in your categorization. We also ran a test with an e-commerce brand recently where expanding the menu by default on desktop led to an 11% growth in incremental sales. So there's little things that you can do that can make a really impactful difference. I want to talk about product pages that actually sell. So product page is kind of the centerpiece of your user's e-commerce experience. Right? So, but at the same time, the product page layout and features tend to be under a lot of strain, and they're often rely on the same templates reused across the entire site's product categories. So product page is kind of where the magic happens, right? The hesitation or purchase, most of them are in actual fact a bit rubbish. Like you wouldn't build a standalone landing page with a single photo, no real description, and a buy now button. So why do we do that for our product pages? You've got to start thinking like a magazine editor. Use rich imagery. So these days, many users incorporate social media content into their product research in some way. So but to this day, we still see many sites are failing to offer social media images or user-generated content or videos and past buyers, and that leaves users with without getting the information they need to confidently proceed with their purchase. So in particular, users glean a lot of information from images provided by past buyers, especially when they're seeking out information that previous customers are uniquely qualified to offer, or that can't be anticipated by your site. When product pages don't offer enough visual information from past customers, users are likely to go off-site and look for that social proof, potentially stumbling across a competitor's site or a marketplace. We did something recently with Hearst magazines where we just reframed a lot of the imagery and copy around kind of social proof, giving real kind of user reviews, how they use products, what they liked about it. And that gave us just over 10% growth in subscriptions for Hearst. Another big one is scale. So somewhere around 40% of users try to understand the size of a product through the product pages. But without an in-scale image, this becomes really difficult and inaccurate. You can see GoPro here does a really great job of this. So they have the image of the camera in hand. It illustrates the size of the product in relation to the model's hands. So in-scale images are critical for users to get a sense of the relative size of products. We do a lot of stuff around delivery costs. Don't make users hunt around for delivery costs. While regular shoppers will totally understand that delivery and returns information is typically stored in checkout, that doesn't make it right. you're missing out on all the visitors who are bouncing because of this uncertainty. They want extreme clarity. They want to know how much delivery is, and they also want to know about returns. They're the bane of especially in e-commerce, they're the bane of our existence. But testing around highlighting returns is a super valuable source of incremental gains. Give buyers no opportunity to wonder whether there are any hidden traps in their purchase journey. As a short ass, I have to go deep into specs for clothing, so it doesn't look like I'm wearing my dad's shirt. It's really frustrating when I'm digging around, I can't find technical specs for a product. We need to make sure that all these specs are there, and it's not just generic. If we have a specific type of product, let's get those specs, dimensions, measurements in there. And what's there, make sure they're scannable. Like laptops have an abundance of associated specs, but staples on the left, it's not really organized in a meaningful way. Whereas on the right, we can see that it's really helpful for users. They've segmented it into sections. They're helping users hone in on the exact specs they're interested in without forcing them to scan through a huge amount of data. Here's a couple of things to try. So give people more information, not less. So better descriptions that don't assume the user knows everything, technical specs, frequently asked questions, and get all your MVPs above the fold. Most users are not going to scroll, so you've only got one shot. Short, snappy, bulleted key decision drivers. Get everything there that a user is going to need, and then almost kind of prove to them that it's worth going down and getting deeper into that product detail. Checkout's kind of often the forgotten sort of stepchild of digital commerce. I think a lot of the time it's really difficult to think about what to do, and we focus on acquisition. We focus all our attention on acquisition, and then the kind of user journey. But then we often forget the checkout. Why do we do that? Why do we leave users so stranded in often, which is kind of the most fragile part of the journey? There's a recent study by Baymard. If you don't know about Baymard Institute, get on it. Really, really interesting stuff, and gives you huge amount of stats on what's working and what's not across a lot of different sectors. I'll share a link for this after the talk. But they did a recent survey, and the average abandonment rate for checkout is around 69%. It also showed the main reasons for customers abandoning is hidden costs that are introduced at the last minute, difficult or complicated processes, which often involve setting up an account, and a lack of trust in the website itself. So let's talk about shipping. Incomprehensibly cumbersome shipping selection processes really anger users and often a direct cause of checkout abandonments. Users have one main concern for delivery speed. When will I receive my order? And a lot of the time, we're really good at giving them an example of 2 business days, but that's not good enough. This is a really business-centric way of conveying that information. Displaying shipping speed 2 business days forces users to research, calculate, and sometimes even guess when they're likely to receive their order. This not only makes it less transparent when the order will be received, but it also introduces a lot of choice complexity into the checkout process during the user's delivery selection, increasing the cognitive load. So instead, try providing a delivery date or a date range, and that allows users to immediately understand when they'll receive their order. We recently had a client with had a similar issue with high delivery fees, and we ran some research speaking to real users to better understand why they were happy to pay more for delivery and add a little bit more product value versus similar products on a marketplace. The insights from this enabled us to reframe delivery fees and value prop, and led to a 3% growth in conversions off the back of it. Keep it simple, stupid. We've all heard it, but if you're making a purchase on a website was so simple a child could do it, you're doing something right. There's a great example of this in the way that in-app purchases are designed. So do you remember, this was like 2016, 2017, Amazon had to pay millions in costs to parents because children, they've made it so easy to purchase that children were spending thousands on in-app purchases. You know, because it's so easy a child could do it, that's kind of the model that we need to try and replicate here, right? So guest checkout, we've already discussed, offers a great way to shortcut first-time purchase abandons by giving users what they want rather than what we want, which is that juicy marketing data, which we kind of need to earn. So always give examples of what you're looking for, be that phone numbers, credit card numbers, formats, or postcodes. Don't put this stuff in the field itself, as this can cause distraction. Make it as easy as possible to give details and ensure your fields are named using conventional terms that your users use rather than the ones that your database uses. And also think, like, do we need this information right now for our users to make this purchase, or do we just want it? If it's the latter, remove it and earn it post-purchase. Look at going really big on trust reinforcement, and it's a really great visual cue that provides that proves effective at increasing the perceived level of security and adding robustness to a user journey is making use of site seals such as trust badges, SSL seals, and other symbols that suggest trustworthiness. Now, there's a broad range of site seals, or each with different meanings that, frankly, most people don't really even understand. The key is making sure that you have these alongside any and all payment options, and this adds trust and removes another layer of friction for users. So think about adding a padlock to your credit card details, as this is proven to improve checkout completes. But again, it's little things like this that you test out. Does it work? Just because it works for your competitors doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you, which is why you test and validate this stuff. So some takeouts here. So there's many ways to skin a cat, right? Validate different ways of breaking down pricing, delivery, and your other costs. Make sure shipping visibility and clarity is on point. As in a lot of testing, this typically sees a massive boost to conversions. Look to add security and trust reinforcement wherever you can throughout that checkout process. And make sure there's a specific, if we're talking about a specific discount from your ads and from landing pages, make sure that that's replicated and it's in the same format. I've lost count of the amount of times that the pricing, the discounting, strike throughs, what have you, it's so varied, and especially as you're moving from your CMS to your e-commerce platform, that there's so much that you can do just to give that consistency. And it's small tweaks like that can really equal kind of big wins. So stop guessing and start testing. So this is really about why you should be experimenting, right? We obsess over media efficiency, and we pay way more for every click than we ever had before. But when it comes to actual experience, the things that traffic's landing on, we kind of wing it, and that's nuts. There's a really interesting video from the CEO of Duolingo, which I saw recently, which I think really kind of speaks to this.
Oh, Osh, we can't hear it if there's supposed to.
Nightmare. Okay.
You can do the voiceover. We can see the.
Okay, cool. I will send a link to that. It's a really interesting one. But essentially, what they were doing is they were making a lot of decisions based on kind of analytics data, on gut feel, and they were like, look, everything that they were testing was coming. What the winning variation was something that they had never imagined. So every time they think this one's going to be a winner, they got it wrong. So what they realize is that while they really understand their product, they're not actually great at picking winners. So from that point on, they started testing and validating every decision they made, both from a marketing and from a commercial perspective, and they can see real growth in that. But again, I'll send you the link. It's a really interesting, if short, kind of video. So what I would do here is around experimentation is to start by running detailed research on your current funnel performance. Where are the biggest drop-offs happening? Is it a checkout during sign-up? Identify where users are leaving can help you pinpoint where it needs to be fixed. Then get a deeper understanding of your users. And that's not just about assuming their needs, it's about uncovering their pain points. Are they confused by your process? Is there missing information? Are they getting frustrated by at any point? These are the insights that are really crucial. And once you've identified those problem areas, dig deeper. use tools like heat maps, session recording, and surveys and interviews to start gathering insights directly from your users. These tools show exactly how users are interacting with your site and where things start to go wrong. Start adding a very clear process with your teams around experimentation. So you empathize, you figure out what's happening with users, what their pain points are, help to define those into testing ideas, ideate those, create a prototype and test it, and then continue to run that cycle as you go through with every idea. And you can start to do this in a really quick and agile way, but it starts to give you a much better understanding of what's happening and what's not, and validate why things are working and why they're not. But this is the fun part. This is the part that we love the most, which is actually running experiments, right? So you've got your design for your improved experience based on data, based on talking to real customers, and it's your time to launch it live to users. So let's say users are struggling to complete a checkout because they don't trust the process. So user research confirms this. So you decide to add trust badges and reassurance messaging like we discussed earlier. With A/B testing, you can measure exactly how much these changes help. So when users reach the page you're optimizing, they're split into two groups. 50% will see the original page and 50% see your improved version. By analyzing their real interactions, journeys and decisions, you gain direct insight into what actually works. Instead of guessing, you're using live customer behavior to shape business decisions and ensuring every change is backed by real data and not assumptions. So the result of this is you can make informed decisions that ensure growth and protect against failure. So let's assume our previous assumption was right, and authority icons that are missing will be the nudge that users need to improve checkout progression and drive revenue. So you'll see a 10% boost in checkout step progression and a 5% increase in actual purchases. And that's a huge improvement in user experience, and more importantly, significant lift to your baseline. So for simplicity, let's say you got 500 monthly viewers, you got a 3% baseline conversion rate. This 5% improvement alone could unlock an additional 750 sales a month. And that's what, 9,000 sales every year? My maths is rubbish at this. Should be better. But all from that one small customer focused change. But what's really interesting is because you're testing it, you'll know whether it doesn't work. And it could be that you put it on your site and it drops conversion by 2%. So by running this test instead of just going live, you've potentially saved 3,600 sales. And that's the real value, is that you get to see the winners, but you also get to see the losers. And this is what we saved by not going live with this change. And ultimately, like, A/B testing is a win-win. When a test succeeds, you gain a proven way to increase conversions and revenue. And when a test fails, you avoid rolling out a change that could have cost you sales. So this is kind of the process that we work with. We start to build these processes and methodologies and teams with our clients. But it's important to remember that A/B testing isn't a one-off; it's a continuous cycle. So make sure your website is as optimized for your campaigns, your customers, and your traffic sources. And remember that it's constantly changing and evolving with your customers. So what works last year may not work this year. So that's why, instead of the kind of the boom bust of, we've got a new CMO, let's redesign a website. Well, wait, we don't know what works and what doesn't with what's already there. So let's figure that out first and go from there. Look, here's a couple of things to try. So try creating a hypothesis board. We believe adding reviews above the fold will increase conversion. Test it, track it, and learn from it. Ruthlessly prioritize. So which ideas are backed by data and user insights? What is the expected impact of a test on this page? How complex would this be to implement? How does it align with our marketing and commercial objectives? Look at running one A/B test a month, even if it's small, like a button label, a hero image, or a layout tweak. Get comfortable with the process and measure the impact. And avoid revenue loss. So by testing every decision, you not only measurably grow sales, but you're also avoiding going live with changes that will negatively impact your bottom line. So getting personal. The future isn't broad, it's specific. If I land in your site and you don't show me everything, and you show me everything you've got, it's a lot to take in. And for many visitors, most of your product range is irrelevant for them at that moment in time. we've all become pretty sophisticated when it comes to automating personalization around products, up and cross-selling. But let's look at some of the ways to leverage personalization to drive higher initial sales volume. Start by asking the right questions. So HIMS do a really cool job of this with their initial questionnaire. It allows them to really hone in on exactly what a visitor's looking for and the problem the problem they're trying to solve. So so now they know that this guy wants a luscious head of hair, don't we all? And but this tells me a lot of information on the products that I can serve, how I onboard that person, and what they might be interested in. So a quiz like this, or a degree of kind of choose your own adventure, can be really useful in better orientating which path to send a user down. What's more, it doesn't need to be massively complex piece of work. Start with an MVP and work from there. Build it, test it, and refine it. Double down on what users care about. So let's make more relevant experiences for users by adding light touch changes to their journey. And this sort of stuff can keep them really engaged. So we did some work for New York Magazine and Vulture. And one of the things that we noticed that we saw a big drop off on the paywalls, and we thought, okay, well, what could be driving this? And a lot of it was it's really generic. It's not offering anything. It's not offering any commonality or similar or synergy with their experience to date. So what we look to do is kind of offer a little bit of light touch personalization there. So instead of continue reading your article with a subscription, it's start by adding article title by article order with a New York Mag subscription, and a lot of that stuff is starting to make a real change. And we started to see a click-throughs on the paywall increase by 15%, and overall subscription rates increased by 9%. And it's just about making it more familiar. We understand where you've come from. We know you want to go back there. Let's keep talking about that and keep it really specific. We went a step further actually, and then started to put real sort of double down on branding and make sure that not only their history but also the specific product they're interested in is really being highlighted. So instead of using that kind of generic overarching New York Mag brand and USPs, we matched the paywall style and the USPs to the magazine that they were interested in reading. And that had a really big effect on subscriptions and paywall clicks. Start looking about dynamic landing pages. So we talked about symmetrical messaging earlier. It's a great way to really sort of start tasting personalization, to play around with copy, creative, and inbound keyword messaging that drove users to your site in the first place. I mean, we were doing this stuff about 10 years ago. Admittedly, it's a lot easier to do now. But it helps orientate users and create a seamless transition, meeting their expectations, and can easily result in significant growth in driving users deeply into your site and ultimately in sales. So there's a couple of things. So look at testing a quiz or onboarding flow. Tailor your homepage. Something like the quiz like HIMS are doing, something that is really, really interesting, or an onboarding flow whereby after your thank you page, what happens next? How do we learn more about the customer based on what they're purchasing, and make sure that their experience is really streamlined to what they're interested in, what they value, and what we can do for them. Look at testing dynamic landing page blocks. So let's put in everything we can from a user search or ad and tailor our landing page content as closely as we can to this. That's especially important for those high CPC, low converting visitors. And start testing you versus everyone else copy. Roughly 90% of customers with your goal chose this product, something like that. Social proof meets personalization, right? So we're social animals, and we're seeing that people like me made this choice gives me a little bit of comfort. It's like a shortcut to decision making by showing that kind of the time sensitive social proof. I want to talk about subscription. We've done a lot of work with subscription and recurring revenue brands, and a lot of the time, kind of once upon a time, having a subscription option was a differentiator, but now it's kind of table stakes, right? It can be conceived as a lazy billing mechanic masquerading as kind of customer relationship. So ask yourself, is this really what my customer wants, or am I just chasing recurring revenue? Subscription fatigue is a real thing, and customers want value, not billing traps. If you don't have one already, start thinking about how do you test and validate whether the subscription is right for your customers. We did something for RSPB Shop recently where we looked at visitors who bought bird feed more than 6 times in the past year, and built a really simple painted door test. I'd say, would you be interested in a subscription for this product that we know you buy all the time? And it turns out only 1% of users said, "Yep, that's me. Sign me up." So we could have gone down the road of building the logistical and technological framework to manage subscriptions, only for 1% of users to actually want it. So test this stuff out and validate it. We're seeing a lot of smart brands starting to pivot to memberships. So something richer, kind of more emotional. So think like exclusive content, friend referral codes, partnerships with other brands. So like banks are bundling in Headspace or insurance, for example. Like it's a real genius unlock. We recently helped Hearst reframe their print and digital subscription products into a premium membership, which gave members a sense of like community, access to exclusive content and events, and personalized training plans. So it takes away from that traditional kind of subscription element, offers something more. With only a few tweaks to the package subscribers already got. So it works because it's framed in the right way, and it's backed by some serious customer research to figure out what users actually want, what they value, and ultimately what they would pay for. We can do a lot worse than learning from product teams. So products have known for years that that to bag the renewal, users need to see value in your products. So that's why we see such attention is focused on onboarding sequence and engagement flows. We did a lot of work with Wall Street Journal to grow active subscribers to 3 million annually from 1 million over the course of 2 years. And we knew that the first 30 days of any subscription are the most vital. So we really analysed the actions users who went on to renew took in that initial period. We started segmenting those by propensity to result in renewal, and began nudging users towards these through a series of over 50 experiments across onboarding and engagement. That's kind of what happens immediately after they purchase a paid-for trial. And it became really about building a high renewal propensity habits. So these range from downloading the app, subscribing to specific newsletters or podcasts, and this habit project led to an 18% increase in customer retention. So it's about finding things that really signpost that this is a user that's going to renew, identifying those, and then driving your new customers to perform those habits. And it could well be subscribing to a newsletter, as simple as that. If that's the thing that unlocks it, let's start driving users to do that, and make them better understand what the value exchange in doing that is going to be. Nest do a really cool thing. I don't know if you guys have got Nest, but they do a little they send a monthly email showing tangible results and even a little bit of gamification about how well you're doing locally. So I like to really test this out, and I'm often in the top 5% of nesters in terms of the energy that I use, and I think about that all the time. But little stuff like this can go a long way. So have a think about what interesting stuff you can share that's going to really engage customers outside of just a standard newsletter. So a few things to try. Run a painted door. Add a subscribe and save button on the product page without building the back end. Track clicks and opt-ins to create a business case. Look at bundling value, not just products. So offer perks, early access, stuff like partner offers, exclusive refer a friend discounts, and not just auto rebilling. And try making it optional. Don't lead with subscription, and let people fall in love with the product first, and then offer it as a frictionless option later on. Lastly, look at surveying subscription customers. Like, why did you subscribe? Why did you cancel? And use that to start shaping a membership experience. So your storytelling is a big one. We do a lot of work with clients around this, and really your website is like it's not a vending machine. It's a stage. It's kind of it's an interview. It's the first handshake. It's the first experience with a customer. And storytelling, like, it's not fluff. It's how humans make decisions. So Understand your value proposition deeply and then communicate it with empathy and conviction. If you're a small brand, put your founder front and center, film them talking about why the brand exists. And that alone can sometimes shift from the purchase from transactional to emotional. There's a lot of research that shows that, especially on D2C websites, users need to get to know the brand before they want to make a purchase decision. They're usually interested in brand values, their origin story, but materials, manufacturing practices, and product quality are often of real importance. 67% of users on D2C sites seek out these kind of non-product content compared to just 37% on traditional retail websites. And it's not just about, it's more than just the products. So for some users, supplemental information like manufacturing ethics or production practices is, particularly important and can have a real impact on the decision to purchase from you as a brand. You also need to start looking at, reinforced trust through quality. So D2C brands especially face the challenge of convincing users why it's worth purchasing from them over a bigger competitor or marketplace. And in practice, relying on information available on product pages, as detailed as they may be, and we've talked about that, may not be enough to convince users that the brand's products are truly unique and worthwhile. So look at bolstering the site with additional information on products' overall quality. And this can help skeptical users understand what sets you apart and why it's worth considering over alternatives. Look at enhancing this with these learning experiences with engaging images, videos, GIFs, anything you can do that's going to highlight your unique brand and product features. Think about jobs to be done. So this is quite a common kind of approach to a lot of the work that we do. But a coffee isn't just caffeine, right? It's something to hold on a road trip. It's a ritual to mark the beginning of the workday, and your products need to do more than they appear. Tell that story. We did a lot of work with Pfizer some years ago, and they had a real problem. They had Access Pfizer was a portal exclusively for pharmacists, and it's packed with really valuable content, but users couldn't find what they needed. We ran a series of user interviews to figure out why. And one of the standouts was their users were looking for CPD, which is continuous professional development section. So pharmacists, I don't know if they need to do a certain number of hours each year to keep their accreditation. And there's literally thousands of pages of this stuff. Yet Pfizer had named this section something else because that's what they called it internally. So the taxonomy your users use should be the one that you're using. And again, research can pick this stuff up. Are we calling our things the right words, the words that our users are using? Figure that out, and then again, like I said, test it. So here's a few things that you can do. Film your founder or your head of product, a 30-second video explaining why this product exists. Put it on a homepage or product page, and you get instant authority. Maybe also create a why we exist page, not corporate bio, but tell the problem you're solving and why it matters. Use jobs to be done style copy. So instead of long-lasting water bottle, reframe that around keeps you hydrated from 9 a.m. meetings to 9 p.m. workouts. I recently spoke to a coffee brand actually who rewrote their product copy using jobs to be done and saw a 16% growth in AOV. So this stuff works. Also think about mapping story arcs to your funnel, right? So your homepage is your brand story, your product page is about problem and solution, and checkout is all about reassurance and reward. Okay, last one. So don't become forgettable in the noise. What do I mean by that? So everyone's using AI, but generic AI written content pages are flooding the web. And the risk here is you becoming forgettable, inauthentic, or losing your brand voice. A lot of smart brands are starting to invest in kind of human and AI hybrid creativity to stand out. So start lifting stuff like customer truths, insights, data from your teams, research, analytics, reviews, and social to start building a voice of customer champion. So imagine having the smartest person in the room who knows everything about your customers, always available to help you make better decisions that are based on data-backed customer insights. And now start creating that, but with an agent. So it knows your customers inside out, it can help you start to make better decisions based on real data, and you can start testing stuff like new campaigns, products, services, and messaging against this, and it's going to really help you start to get to the heart of what's important for your customers, and heading in the right direction. I think we all know this one about the grey cars, right? So grey cars dominate production because they're safe, neutral, and broadly appealing. For manufacturers, grey minimises inventory risk. Fewer bold colours mean there's less chance of them sitting on unsold stock. But safe doesn't always mean smart. So like the over-reliance on default choices often reflects internal risk aversion, so not customer insight. And often it's kind of a metaphor for corporate decision making. Optimize for minimal friction, not maximum impact. So as your competitors lean into AI to automate more and more decisions, training your own LLM on specific customer data and insights that you own is going to allow you to continue to develop a unique, powerful proposition, stand out, and to avoid making grey cars. And also start to make informed decisions. A gentle reminder that adding AI into your journey, processes, or products is great, but only if it addresses a certain clear user need. Spend your time, energy, and budget fixing problems that are preventing you from turning customers into advocates and visitors into customers. A couple of things to try: build an MVP customer champion and test its findings against your team and your existing thinking. Like validate what it's good at, learn and improve it. You can create a V1 in ChatGPT relatively simply just to test it out. Harness the power of your own customer data and insights to continue getting the best from AI, but with your own flavor. Don't just make great cars. And make product marketing and UX decisions based on ruthless prioritization. What's more important to our customers in commercial growth? This really cool AI-based tool that we want to build, or fixing our landing page messaging and layout? Okay, so what do we do next? Every time I watch one of these sort of things, I come home and I'm really excited. I've got thousands of ideas that I want to get started with, but I start to get kind of overwhelmed by the scale of it. And I just get back to the other 5 million things I have to do. I'm sure that sounds familiar. So I kind of give some take homes. So here's what I would do if I were you. And this works for anywhere on that maturity scale where you don't do any testing or research versus you've got an entire team that are doing this. So data's your compass. Don't rely on gut feel. Let analytics show you where users drop off, what they care about, and what's actually driving revenue. Most brands tend to use analytics a bit like a drunk uses a lamppost, for support rather than illumination. Research beats assumptions 10 times out of 10. Your data tells you what your users are doing, but your research explains why they're doing it. So ask real customers, use surveys, polls, reviews, and interviews to uncover why they buy and why they bounce. Look at prioritization. You'll always have more ideas than resource. So use frameworks to ruthlessly rank what to test next based on impact, confidence, and effort. And ultimately test everything and assume nothing. Small wins compound. Big ideas often flop, and every insight, good or bad, is going to move you forward. And remember, optimization isn't about being right, it's about getting better relentlessly. Thanks. I got through it.
Wow, Osh, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I've also shared in chat a great podcast on jobs to be done and an article on language market fit, because you talk about both of those. And we'll make sure we share the survey results, the deck, and some of these links in the email afterwards, as well as the recording, because my guess is you're going to want to go back through some of this because there was so much insight there. There's a couple of questions, but before I go there, Osh, I just wanted to ask one selfishly. It's come up a couple of times in various communities. What A/B testing tools do you recommend?
Well, if only I had a comparison tool which would tell you that, which I'll send a link to. But do you know what? Like any SaaS, it depends. It depends how much traffic you have. It depends what sort of testing you're doing. You can start at the bottom with like Web Trends Optimize is a good solution. It's pretty cheap. Versus something like Optimizely, which is going to be setting you back, 100,000 K a year. But they both let you do very different things. So it depends on the scale of your optimization and experimentation team, what level of personalization you're going to be doing, what integrations you need. But if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. But I would, start somewhere sort of cheap and cheerful. Kind of the web trends VWO maybe is a good shout. There used to be Google Optimize, which was free, and that kind of got everyone used to it. But like the other A/B testing platforms are fuming because they're like, well, it's gone now, but everyone needs to pay. So there's been an educational piece for them to get that off the ground.
Thank you. And I just want to add in, and we'll include this in the email as well, that Osh is very happy to do a couple of one-on-one sessions. So if you've got more, then see if he can spare some time for you. Paul, I know you had a couple of questions. Do you want to come off mute and ask them rather than me being the go-between?
Thanks, Nicola. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, perfect.
Indeed.
Hi, Osh. Thanks. That was all really, really valuable. I'm going to kind of link three themes together, if you don't mind. And it comes
sure.
from my original training was as a bricks and mortar store manager for HMV. And so one of the things I always struggle with in the digital journey optimization is, so for example, with an experiment in HMV, I might on a Saturday morning put one album at the front of the store. And if it wasn't selling by lunchtime, I'd change it and put something else there.
Yeah.
And what teams have often struggled to explain to me in an experimentation culture is you either get kind of like, oh no, we need to keep it going for a bit longer because we haven't yet reached statistical significance, or we get it's not worth doing because you'll never reach statistical significance. So just hold that one, because I'm interested in your rule of thumb about how many or how long constitutes an experiment.
Yeah.
The second piece for me is I'm always flabbergasted. So one of the first things that was drilled into me was every day walk your shop like you're a customer. So you went in, you opened up, you got all the staff doing what they do. Then you'd go out the front of the shop, and guess what? You'd spot that there was a piece of chewing gum just by the doorway, or that the poster had fallen down in the window.
Mm.
And I don't see web e-commerce teams doing that. Is there a way that can be done and automated? Second question. And then thirdly is a deliberately skeptical one around the personalization piece. I completely understand the power of personalization, but if you've got a journey on a mass level that isn't working, shouldn't you fix that before you start creating multiple journeys, which then snowball into like loads of journeys, all of which aren't quite working and are very difficult to manage? So that was my kind of buffet of questions. I hope they sort of link together in some way.
Right. While they're fresh in my mind. Okay. So first one is it depends. Yes, you can. You need to reach that sig. We've got a couple of things. We built a tool in collaboration with Spotify last year, which is what we call sequential analysis. I do not understand how it works because all my geeks built that for me. But it kind of lets us scientifically peek behind the curtain and see how things are doing, and that reduces the amount of time that it takes to run an experiment. But ultimately, it's always a big problem. So which is why research comes in. Right, so you've got two ways of doing things. You can experiment on site, but you could also look at prototyping and validating with existing or lapsed users or panels, and that's another way that you can start to reach some of those decisions.
Gosh, Osh, I guess what I'm looking for though is, so if you go to research to do some quant, someone will say, well, your N needs to be 500 for it to be meaningful.
Yeah.
I'd love for someone in your world, because no one has yet, to share what N looks like.
Take
it away, mate. But for me, that's why I can't be compelled to it, because unless someone tells me how long the piece of string needs to be, how do I know? Do you know what I mean? So it becomes a circular piece. So I think that'd be a really valuable way, or an enhancement to your presentation, where you say, look, typically we think for this kind of change, you need to run it for at least a week. This kind of change, you need to have at least 1,000 visitors or whatever to be able to get stat sig.
Yeah, I mean, I can share a lot of the kind of the tools and best practices that we use for that sort of stuff, and that'll give you some insight. So, I'm sorry, Paul, I remember the third question, but what was your second question?
Second question was, is there a way to kind of like use AI or indeed other ways to basically perform that I am walking back in the store as if I'm a manager every day? Because that whole thing around, thing that Nicola's goat around, oh man, there's a jacket and now I can't find it. Why have you shown me an ad for something that I can't find? That's just that would never happen in a physical retail environment, right? So why is it happening online? And therefore, what processes have people got ideally automated to stop it happening? Or shall we start a business together and fix it?
I think we should do that. I mean, I'm working on something at the moment, which is which does part of that. It's kind of that, what we're calling like a sentinel, right? Is it tell you when these things are out of position, when you got a chewing gum on the floor. The old fashioned way of doing that is literally get all your different teams in a room and map this stuff out and figure out, okay, well, does that make sense to you? No. Your point about personalization is really valid. A lot of the time, clients say to us, "Right, we need to be doing personalization." Like, okay, cool. So your foundations are perfect. You've got you understand what you want to personalize, why you're doing it, and cool. And we can help you find a tool that's going to help you do that seamlessly and at scale. But a lot of the time, we don't have the answers to those questions before we start going down that road. And again, that's why kind of experimentation comes into it. Is that you want to, you find those answers and then start to build up, and all boats rise off the back of that. Yeah, you see a lot of the time, and that's where my pink jacket comes into things. Is that this stuff is broken because we're trying to move, we're trying to run before we can walk.
Brilliant, Osh. I won't take any more of your time because I don't want to hog. Thank you very much. Great session. I'd love to chat afterwards if you're up to it. Cheers.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of minutes left. So, Osh, do you just want to outline a little bit about how people can get in touch, and also the free audit one-to-one sessions you're happy to provide for a couple of our lucky audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, you can get in touch. Well, I know that that Nicola's going to share some links and kind of documents from us. You can get in touch with me. I'm Osh Rice at Daydot Agency, which I will be sharing again after the presentation. I think for me, there's a couple of really interesting takeaways that three lucky people come to me. But ultimately, if you want to have a conversation, no strings attached, say, hey, this is the problem we're struggling with. I'm happy to take half an hour of my day and have that with you guys. Kind of call it an AMA. But look, we'll give three lucky attendees a homepage or a product page audit. That's kind of the starting point for a lot of our engagement with clients. It's kind of figuring out, okay, well, let's look at your analytics. Let's look at this page. Let's figure out what kind of based on best practice that is going wrong here, and create some actionable insights off the back of that, and have and then kind of play that back to you and your team. See what you think, and help you figure out a way to fix those. Whether that be kind of JDI is just kind of let's implement this now, or I think this needs a bit more thought. But we're happy to give three of you lucky winners. I don't know, Nicola, gives me so much appetite for that. We might need to do a tombola.
Yeah, we'll obviously pick at random. There is no favoritism here at all. But yeah, we'll include all the details in the email, which will follow either today or tomorrow. There might be a bit of delay because James is busy getting ready for the big football game tonight. So it will be out today or later. Thank you so much, Osh. Really, really appreciate all the work that went into that deck, and some great stories that you shared too. And hopefully we'll see you again at another CMO Circle webinar soon. And thank you all for sparing your lunchtime to come and join us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming, all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Osh.
Cheers.